Well, this is early. We know better now, but this is early in my driving career, But
You probably had a mullet back then, and
we could get into that if you want. But I did have a mullet.
I
It
had
was a
one. I'm not ashamed of it. I had one.
yeah, but see, I had to put a perm in the back of mine to get it to curls. So I ain't gonna admit that to everybody. Just people who watch this podcast, but it was rough. But
Welcome back to another episode of Modified Rods Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Darrell. Today I have what you would consider a car show celebrity with me. He's the mayor of car shows, or I should say of truck shows. Also, you might know him as Mr. Zebra Cakes. Most people do know him as Nikki Poe's husband. Here's Darrell Poe.
hey, what's up, guys? How's it going?
So I guess, like I said, we'd consider you Nikki Poe's husband. I guess more people know you as that now. So,
Oh yeah, for sure. She's the celebrity, not me.
so Darrell, I guess you ran for, was it car show mayor? You like hypothetically car show or truck show, or what was it?
Well, not necessarily. Of course, Chris Trine gave me that name, and I'd introduce myself to people just because I'm a friendly guy, And then he was like, "Man, you're like a mayor." He's like campaigning, and it just stuck. So everybody calls me the mayor, but it is what it is.
You'll always be the mayor, or Mr. Zebra Cakes. I'm surprised you don't have a zebra cake with you now.
Man, I haven't had one of those in about 8 months. Honestly, I guess you get burnt out on them when you eat them a bunch. So I just haven't had one. Just hadn't had the desire.
All right, so let's get into who you are, where you're from.
Well, I'm from Bluefield, West Virginia. Actually, a little town called Bluewell, and it's basically outside of Bluefield. It's one of our little. I ain't gonna call it a big city, but so I'm actually from Bluewell. Been here pretty much all my life. As a baby, we lived in Texas for a little bit, but we moved back, and like I said, I've been here all my life. I'll be 48 this year, and I ain't went nowhere. So. But yeah, I travel for work and get to come to see a lot of you guys, and used to go up into West Virginia a lot, and that's how I met a lot of people, through the mini truck stuff there as well.
So have you always traveled for work, or is that something you've recently started doing, or?
Well, no, I've been traveling now. God, probably I've been with the company 27 years this year, and I've traveled 23 of it, and been all over the East Coast pretty much. And so now I'm down in North Carolina, South Carolina, some of Georgia on occasion, and that's pretty much my sales territory.
I know one of the recent times you were down this way, Mitchell Metcalf's like, "Hey, I'm going to go eat dinner with Darrell. Do you want to go meet?" I'm like, "No," because the last time I ate dinner with Darrell, I had to drive halfway across the country to meet you. We met in Amarillo, Texas. Wildest thing ever. Here, me and my wife are leaving SEMA, and Darrell and his dad were on his way to Vegas. And I was like, "Well, where are you at?" And he's like, "Well, I'm 2 hours from Amarillo." I'm like, "Well, I'm 2 hours from Amarillo." So we met at the Big Texan and had dinner. So yeah, I'm not going out of my way after I already had to drive halfway across the country to have dinner with you.
Just to have dinner. Yeah. Well, that was actually pretty cool. When we were headed to Cali, and I wanted to, what was funny, I'll tell a quick story about that. We were eating Taco Tuesday here, and my dad, I told him, I said, if you ever get the chance with this new company he's working with to go out west, I'd really like to go to Vegas with you, And I'll be dang on if that Thursday he calls me. He said, "Hey, you remember how you said you wanted to go west?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "How about San Jose, California?" And I'm like, I was thinking more of just Vegas, but then we ended up going all the way to California. And of course, with his health issues, we had to stop one night and get a hotel. And, but after sleeping in a truck stop for 3 hours, the hotel was a good call, but I wanted 2 nights in Vegas, but, that's a haul for anybody that wants to do it and leave the East Coast and go to San Jose, California. Think twice about it. But it was good that I got to spend that time with my dad, though. So
that is the fact to drive across country with your dad and sightsee and do some stuff on the way, stop, see some friends. I mean, that's something most people, our age don't get to do that, with someone that has never made that trip. So.
Yeah, and I try to tell people that, some people say, "Man, I'm not sitting in a car that long." I'm like, dude, look, you don't know what you're missing because it's actually a fun trip if you plan it right, stay in a couple hotels, do whatever, and get up and roll. But that's actually twice I've made it because I took my truck to Mini Truck Showdown. So I I enjoy that, but some people don't. So
Well, I say every year I'm not driving back to Vegas again for SEMA, and here we are again this year. We're
right,
making that 32-hour drive without really stopping. But of course, we always stop a couple nights and sightsee a little bit. And like last year, Mitchell never been to the Grand Canyon, where it's an hour off of I-40 to go to the Grand Canyon. So minimum, there's 2 hours plus the time of the Grand Canyon. I'm like, hey, we have time. Do you want to go to the Grand Canyon? He was like, well, I've never been, so let's go. So we made a 4 or 5 hour excursion that day to do it. But how often are you able to go see something like the Grand Canyon that us East Coasters don't get to see that often?
that's exactly right. And I do about my dad and our trip. I do regret not taking him there because he may never get to go back out that way again. But he does. He has been to Colorado a couple times, so maybe one day he's out there, or if we take another trip with him, I'll be sure to take him to the Grand Canyon for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So let's get into the background of who Darrell Poe is. So what got you into, I could only say mini trucks, because you've never been into, like, you make fun of me about the full size trucks and the import cars because they're not mini trucks, but
Right.
what got you into the mini truck world when you were a young kid?
So actually, about the age of 12 years old, my cousin Sammy, he lowered his first truck, and I had seen some trucks and stuff before, but never really rode in them or anything like that until until he lowered his
Yeah.
first one. So him and his buddies would always drive by my house. I only lived, God, half a mile from him. So I would go up there and watch what they were doing. And they were putting blocks on them. They was cutting control arms to flatten them. And I mean, it was just insane at what they were doing. And so I actually started drawing trucks at the age of 12 years old, and they look like stick figure trucks, but I can't draw it.
I guess this is probably what, 90, late 80s?
Well, let's see, it'd been like 88. Yeah, probably 88 because I was born in 76. So yeah, it's about the time I started drawing trucks and stuff. And then once he lowered his, and then I rode in it, I'm like, man, I gotta get this. And he had a pretty decent sound system in it. And so that's really what got the ball rolling for me. And then seeing his friends, and then you got another guy here. His name's Brian Halsey. He had a Nissan with drip paint. My buddy Chris Sizemore, he was coming out with one. He painted that thing I bet he painted that thing every 6 months. He got tired of looking at it. So he's a paint and body guy. So he would go and sand the paint off and then put a new paint job on it. So that's what really snowballed it for me to really get into this. And then my dad, he goes, I'll give you this S10 when you turn 15, we'll lower it. And I wish I had a picture of it, but my uncle, God rest his soul, put the god awfulest paint job on this truck. I mean, it was just terrible. A friend of mine called it the clown truck, but it had, don't get me wrong. At this day and time, somebody might, if it was body dropped on some big billets and had some nice interior, somebody would go, well, that's kind of old school paint job, but it was just, it was terrible. So I told my dad, I said, man, we can't have this. We got to paint this thing. And he goes, well, there's so much paint on it, and especially with the factory paint. He goes, if you strip everything, we'll start over. I'm like, okay, cool, man. I'm out in my yard stripping with aircraft stripper, and I get this truck by piece. I get it to bare metal.
Yeah,
because I had to get rid of that paint job. And then, so anyway, I kept that one for a little while. We repainted it, and so after that, I ended up selling that one or giving it to my brother, and so he sold it, and then I bought a Camaro. Actually, I'm like, man, I really like that Camaro. It had a 4.3 V6 in it, nothing real fancy or nothing, but it was nice.
So knowing you had a Camaro, you can't make fun of me for having cars anymore.
Well, this is early. We know better now, but this is early in my driving career, But
you probably had a mullet back then, and
we could get into that if you want. But I did have a mullet.
I had one. I'm not ashamed of it. I had one.
Yeah, but see, I had to put a perm in the back of mine to get it to curls. So I ain't gonna admit that to everybody, just people who watch this podcast, but it was rough. But I mean, that's the style back in, whatever, it's a lot of fun. But I also owned a Dodge Daytona, the first turbo car I owned, and man, I love that car. It's red. But around that time, I'm like, man, I just I and I've tinkered with trucks still with it, but when I owned those cars, but I'm like, man, I got to get rid of these. I'm a mini trucker. I got to have another mini truck. So I actually sold well, we got rid of the Camaro, and then the Daytona I actually traded in for my S10 Rock Bottom, and it was basically an older man's truck. It had one of the old I call them Pawpaw camper shells, but with the big old bubble windows and then the roll out windows or push out, whatever. So it had one of those on it. And within 30 days, the 30-day tags were still on it, and I had it lowered. And then I put juice on it, and I rode around with that for a little while. It was constantly, I mean, you try to drive that as a daily driver, and some of the pumps would lock up, and pump heads inside the tank would lock up, all this. And I got out there one day and I charged my batteries. I was waiting on Pro Hopper to send me a pump head. And I get out there and I change it, and there's snow on the ground. And so I change it and I hooked my battery up, but dummy me, I was standing over the battery, kind of looking in the bed. And when I touched that terminal, the battery actually blew up in my face. And so I kind of like jumped back down and I started like putting snow on my face because I didn't know if I was going to burn me or what. And after that, I was like, you know what? I can't daily this thing anymore. And that's about the time that airbags were kind of taken off. We used to get our stuff, of course, from Jody Hall. And when Timmy was working down there and I called him up, I was like, man, I need some bags, man. This juice has got to go.
This was in Rock Bottom, your truck, Rock Bottom.
Yeah. Basically before it became Rock Bottom, because the transformation was taking place when Timmy, he worked at the drop shop for a little while, and he come back, he said, if you can get your truck tore down, he goes, I'll show you where to cut everything and we'll cut it and body drop it. I said, okay, perfect. So I ordered all the bags. I had the truck tore down, nothing but the cab and the engine. And we actually body dropped it on 4 pieces of plywood behind my house. And
so not in a shop, not in a garage.
No, I got pictures of it, man. It's kind of crazy. A buddy of mine come over to help me kind of do some cleaning on the chassis and stuff. We're in coveralls. I had a kerosene heater inside a tarp, and I had boards seat clamped to the back of the frame, trying to weld a bridge notch and all that in it. So we were dedicated, man. It's first body drop truck around here in my parts. And
what year was this?
That would have been 98.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's when I only body dropped it like 3 inches, and it had some 16-inch MHT Omegas on it. And I actually, instead of buying wheel adapters for it, they were a 5-on-4 and 3/4 pattern. I had a machinist that I was real good friends with when I first started Smith Services. And I asked him, I said, man, can you make these adapters? And I showed him what I needed, and he made my adapters. I didn't even buy any. He made everything. We popped the studs in them and bolted these MHTs on there, man. And it was awesome.
And those that don't know Darrell's background, this is a square body standard cab S10.
S10, yeah. And so I can remember cruising it in Pigeon Forge then, and I'm trying to think.
What color was it then?
It was red. It was red, and it still had the body line and stuff in it. Nothing real fancy, but had the little old paddle valves with the one little gauge on the dash and 1/4-inch line. It was so slow, but you're cruising Pigeon Forge and you're a 1/2 inch off the ground. You didn't care how fast it was really at that time.
Yep.
So Timmy actually moved back here from the drop shop, and I told my dad, I said, man, we need to start putting together a shop behind the house. It's like, I really want to take off and do a lot of work to these trucks and things. And so Timmy, he got in touch with me. He said, man, I need a place to put my truck. And I said, okay, bring it on up. And man, he brought back parts and everything, which that truck was known as the Bloody Butcher. And so I tell you that to get into this. So Timmy and his wife at the time, we're building the walls around my shop, and while they're working on the truck. in on the concrete pad. So he gets his done and debuts it in 99, and the
Okay.
feature come out in 2000. So through 99, I said, man, we got to cut this truck again. I want it basically to the door. And we did. We left just a thin line of, rocker, and I plated it, and we body dropped it another 2.5 inches. So he got
What was
featured
the total
in,
body drop on it then?
what's that?
What was the total body drop on it then?
5.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Forgot it was that much.
it was actually pretty stupid because I didn't flatten the floorboards, and we took it in 99. I took it to Pigeon Forge, and I had painted the truck myself, and it was not cool. I was trying my hand at painting, and it was green. I had a shell on it, the engine sticking through the hood, no cow hood or nothing on it. But Timmy got featured, and his came out in 2000. So after many nats in 99, I come back and I blew the whole truck apart again, and I got with my buddy to paint it. And then we basically re-debuted it in 2000, and Lance March shot it for mini trucking. And
Okay.
it had the blue flames and stuff on it. And then, so the magazine come out in 2001. Then I tried my hand at painting it again, and I kind of re-debuted it again in 2003.
So even though you're the mini truck mayor, I still beat you in mini trucking, being mine was 99.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, mine got featured. Like I said, it got shot in 2000, came out in 2001. Yeah. So then after that, we had Bristol when Nope moved to Bristol, and I'd painted the truck. Well, I had a guy paint it for me. I went back to red with it, and I was actually looking at pictures of those the other day, and the interior was just like, back then it was cool, but man, looking at it and seeing all these, hot rod interiors and stuff this day and time, that interior was just, oh, it's terrible. And it made me cringe looking at it.
Didn't you say you had pictures of my CRX at one of the mini nats with your truck there or something?
I may have pictures, but I do know I have a video, and I actually walked around your car. Yeah, and it was doglegging or whatever,
Yeah.
Yeah, I sure
That's
do. I got
we even knew who each other was.
right. I didn't even know you then. No. I'd actually, that same weekend is when I met Courtney, and
Which is who shot my car.
Yeah, oh yeah. And he had, or Tony Audi had actually, I think, debuted his Ranger that was doored that same weekend, if I'm not mistaken. So there was a lot of awesome stuff then, and it makes you wonder where some of that stuff is today.
Scratch ups, probably.
Oh yeah, I remember the long bed Mazda that was orange. Dustin painted.
Yeah,
Man, that thing was insane. I love that truck. But yeah, that's pretty much the history with Rock Bottom.
So how did you come up with the name Rock Bottom, though?
I actually liked wrestling back in the day, and The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. Of course, everybody called him The Rock, and he was one of my favorites. And then it hit one day because I'm almost certain his finishing move was called that, and I was like, that fits really well, and it just stuck. And with the truck being so low, Rock Bottom was just fitting,
Yeah. So Rock Bottom, it was what, green? Was it just green, or was it green and silver?
Well, yeah, it was green and silver, and it had blue flames coming out. And then after that, I changed it in 2002 to the whole bottom was silver, the top was green, and then I put orange flames on the back of it. They weren't ripping out of the paint. They were just, it was something I come up with, and to be honest with you, I should have never painted it. But in all honesty, that paint job that I did on it looked really good, and I was actually getting into painting, and I liked it, but it just got too much. I'm like, man, I had a guy want me to paint his truck, and I did, and it was just too much of a hassle for me. I'd rather get out here and weld and, fab metal instead of painting. It just wasn't for me.
So you built that truck. You built that truck yourself, though.
I did. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Timmy, like I said, Timmy Williams, the former owner of the Bloody Butcher, he helped me get started. And then, of course, I had some friends come over. They would hold this, do that, whatever. And then I would do all the welding and fabbing. And So later on, I forget what year, but a guy had a Ford Ranger Cali combo here. And I said, man, what are you going to do with that? I'd actually bagged the truck for him. And he goes, well, I probably ain't going to do anything with it. And I was like, well, I may want that. And he goes, okay. And I may have gave him $150 for it or something. So I
Yeah.
took that Cali combo, and not a lot of people know this, but in rock bottom to this day, the dash in it is the bottom half of that Cali combo for a Ford Ranger. And then I ended up taking, because I didn't have a bead roller, didn't have an English wheel, none of that stuff. So I ended up finding, huh?
No one really did back then.
No, And so what I did is I took some tractor and trailer exhaust pipe and I split it in half, and I made the roundness on that dash to make it round instead of just being square, you know.
Yeah.
So then I took that and incorporated it down the top of the doors, and that's all tractor and trailer exhaust pipe that's on that, that's welded to that Ranger Cali combo. So after that, then of course I ended up you shot it at laid out at the park for mini truck, and then it wasn't long after that, because I'd owned the truck, I think it was 17 years, and I redone it like 7 times.
What year did I shoot it? It was early 2000s.
Well, it was like 2011, I think.
Okay, I know it pops up in my memories every so often around laid out the park time. So,
yep, we actually got a nail in my tire that day, and that's the first time I met Benji Harless, because you were wanting to shoot it over there on that concrete pad, and I think they've built stuff there since. Maybe, I don't know, but I do know they built the Bojangles up the road from it. So, but yeah, we ended up
for a few years. I shot several there, and it was that Sunrise. I shot yours there, Benji's Frontier. I shot Brent's that turquoise Stepside Ranger, a couple of Mazdas. I mean, there were several that was there in that location. So,
that
was always an early morning. I think you complained that you had to be up at sunrise that morning, and
well, it wasn't so much that I was complaining. It just was. It was pretty late going to bed that night, but I was excited, man. That was definitely some good times. But yeah, so it got featured the following year, and then
in mini trucking.
In mini trucking, and then we were. What show was that? Oh, when Scrape Fest was at the not Hickory, the Concord small track. It wasn't Lowe's Motor Speedway, but it was the smaller track. And I showed there, and Sean Reese had a Tahoe that had a caddy front end on it. He was like, Poe, you need to get rid of that S10. He goes, I'll trade you straight up for this Tahoe. And I'm like, man, I don't know. I've had this thing forever. The engine in it actually came out of a truck that my pawpaw had, and I had bagged it for my cousin, and then he sells it and it gets wrecked. So then I buy it back for all the parts and everything, and then I pull the engine out and put it in rock bottom. And so it kind of had some sentimental value to me, but I was like, man, you know, I got twin girls now, and this Tahoe, I could put a back seat back in it, and I can, you know, take my kids and we can go to shows and do all this. So I ended up trading, and sometimes I regret it in a sense, but I'm like, you know, it wouldn't have led me to where I am today. I don't think, you know, we could all second guess stuff, but getting rid of it was the best stuff.
Backing up a little bit, was it that laid out in the park that I shot your truck? Was that the first time we met?
No, we actually met through a former member. Well, he's a member now, but he left for a little while. We actually met through that, and that's back when we had like Yahoo Messenger or something. So everything had to be approved for extreme lows. So you were actually going to shoot my truck when it would have been 2004 when Mini Nats come back to the Sevier County Fairgrounds. Yeah. And on the way down, my window strip around my window, a section of it, say like 12 inches long or so, was flapping. So I just pulled it all out, and I'm like, I'll fix it when I get back. I had no seam sealer, nothing like that. So you had told him, hey, I would shoot that truck if it had the windshield strip in it. And that's when it was solid red. Now. Yeah. So that's actually really, that kind of got the ball rolling and I knew who you were then. And then I think the very first time we ever kind of quote hung out was there were several of us that met you in Johnson City, and we went to like a Texas
Oh
steak.
yeah, dinner.
Yeah. So that's the first time I think we really.
That was halfway between where you live and I live. I remember a bunch of us come over, me and Chris and a bunch of us come over.
Yep, absolutely. So that's, I think, the first time that I can remember that we, really got to talk and hang out or whatever. And then Kenny and I got into Extreme Lows, and then he left. And so me and Kenny kind of took over the West Virginia chapter and this and that and the other. And here we are today with that part of it.
You guys always come down and help with scraping the Smokies when I did that. And I did that from 2006 to 11, I think.
Yeah.
I think you guys come down for most of those shows to help judge and all that stuff.
We did. And I think that's actually probably the first time I'd ever met Adam in person too. And then trying to think some of the others I met. Actually, you introduced me to Brandon Perry that day on one of the shows. He had just brought I guess he did have
choke change, had no glass or nothing in it.
Yeah, well, I didn't meet him then. I think the truck was finished with the first paint job. It didn't have the skulls or nothing on it, but I'm certain. Yeah, and then that's the first time I seen, which is now old Crispy with the spikes on the bridge notch and stuff. That's the first time I'd ever seen it.
And we were talking about that when Adam was down for mini nats. I remember Eric from Little Shop pulled up that year. I think that was the year he brought that truck, and he had one of the tow vehicles. Something happened to it and couldn't use it. So he welded a trailer hitch to the back of one of his trailers. So he pulls into the showgrounds with a dually with a flat trailer behind it and another trailer hooked behind that. And I'm like, is that even road legal to drive 6 hours like that?
Well, I think we've all done some crazy stuff back in the day. We used to make some stuff of it. It wasn't real safe, but it got it done, I guess.
So back to where you said you traded the truck to Sean. See, I thought you had sold it. I never realized that you had traded to Sean. I know Sean Reese was, he traded a lot of vehicles back then. He wouldn't keep nothing more than a couple months, but I always thought you sold it.
No, I actually did trade it. We traded straight up, and I hauled it to him, and a buddy of mine went with me, and he pulled the empty trailer back because I'm like, man, I'm going to drive his Tahoe. I didn't want to load it up, man. It rode pretty good. I don't want to, it's not that I'm trying to bash anything, but the chassis and stuff was pretty rough. I mean, I've got pictures of that where I redone it. I basically did a 3/4 chassis on it. It used the front suspension. It had tubular control arms. So I built that suspension. And so, well, I got to where I was like, man, I just don't know about this, and there was some a life-changing event kind of happened. And I'm like, this is why. Yeah. And you know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, yeah. So I'm like, I'm not going to keep this Tahoe. It's just not me. I want back in a mini truck again. And even though the thing was bagged and body dropped already, and as you can see over my shoulder, when we get one, I don't like to keep them to where people recognize them that somebody else had that truck. So if nobody knew the history of Nikki's Isuzu,
I didn't realize that was whose it was. And I saw one of his posts on Facebook or TikTok or something the other day, and he said you guys had it. I'm like, wow, that's that truck?
Same truck, yeah. And that's what I say. So that's what I was doing to the Tahoe. I'm like, it had the caddy front end on it, all that, and I was going to put back the old, the headlights and the park lights, the old Chevy grill. I was changing. We suicided the doors. Well, Sizemore, my buddy Sizemore, you've met him. He was a teacher at the vocational school, and he said, man, bring me the body. You take the chassis and rebuild it and this and that, and we'll do all the body work and stuff through here. Well, as I'm building the chassis and everything, he was no longer the vocational school teacher. I don't know what happened, but he's like, hey man, you're going to have to contact the school to get your parts back. I'm like, God, that sucks. But luckily before summer, I got the chassis out. I got the body out and some of the parts, but like all the side glasses, all the door glasses, all of that is still stuck at that vocational school as far as I know, unless they trash it.
Really?
I had to write a letter to the principal, do all this. And I said, you know what? I'll just sell it. So I kept the wheels off of it. I actually traded the engine and transmission to a friend of mine and for an engine and transmission for the Outlaw. And all that kind of just took off. And so I kept the wheels, sold the body, just the body and the chassis for $1,250. And off it went. Don't even know where it's at to this day. So the Outlaw actually, I body dropped it and bagged it for a buddy of mine. And he started to have a family and stuff. He lost interest. So
and for those who don't know, the Outlaw is a round body standard cab S10. So he goes from a square body that he's known for to now a round body.
Yeah, absolutely. And how that came about is my brother, he says, I want to get back into mini truck and I want to do this. And I'm like, and man, I love my brother dearly, but we're kind of like night and day. I mean, we get along great, but we're not the same. Like he likes go-kart race and do all this, and that's great. And I love him for it, but we start building this truck together. So I'm like, hey, I'm gonna order this little shop Noto steering kit for it.
I forgot that was his truck.
Huh?
I forgot that was his truck.
Yeah, it was his for about a month or so. And then I said, well, let's just build this together. I will help you. We'll pay for parts, do all this, and we'll split everything. He goes, okay, sounds good. Well, when I ordered that little shop steering kit, it was like $450 or something. I said, I need $225. I ordered this steering kit. He goes, what? He goes, man, I think you're taking this truck a little too far for my liking. He said, I'll tell you what, you just buy me the truck that I want. You take this truck. We had bought a welder together and all this. He goes, you can have the welder and everything. I want this truck. It's completed and it's done. I said, okay. Well, long story short, on that part of it, it had hydraulics on it. So we ended up taking it apart and putting bags on it for him. And he rode it for a while. And I became the sole owner of the Outlaw. But I mean, of course, by then it was not the Outlaw. For those that don't know, I actually named the truck Black and Tan at first after the Yingling beer, just because I was going to. I knew.
We all know you're a bitch. I mean, Mick Ultra guy. So don't lie that you don't drink Yingling.
I'll drink a Yingling every once in a while, but and of course, most people know my favorite movie is Tombstone, and so as it started to progress, I'm like, I'd really like to do a theme truck. And I started talking to my buddy Adam Cutlip, and I'm like, hey, man, we need some Old West airbrushing and this and that. And he's like, oh, yeah, man, that's great. So that's was
it already named the Outlaw at this point? Or
no, it took a little bit. I actually had a rendering done that had like some airbrushing on the side. It was just like from like a 57 Chevy car, the chrome trim and everything. And I actually posted that a little while back, and I'm thinking, man, well, how it's changed from the rendering, and so I can't really remember how that came about either. Like when I first said, hey, this truck's going to be called the Outlaw. But as we got going with it, I let him airbrush my air tank first. And man, I went and picked that up. It was amazing. And I'm like, this is definitely, because I knew Adam well, I knew of him well, let's say it that way. And then we became better friends over the years. And he, after I picked up that air tank, I said, definitely, this is the guy that would be airbrushing my truck. And
now did you have the chassis and everything ready for that when he airbrushed it, or did you have that tank first? I don't remember.
Well, I had the tank in there first and actually showed it that way with no door glasses, no windshield, no back glass, none of that.
You showed the chassis for a while too.
I did. I actually showed the chassis in 2016, something like that. Yeah, it laid out.
I remember I got pictures of me airing your chassis up. It laid out with the Tundra because you couldn't get it on the trailer without airing it up. So what it was. That's a recurring theme for me. I put onboard air on my vehicle so I can air your stuff up to get it on trailers. I just realized that's been multiple shows with multiple vehicles that I've had to help you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And here's the thing though. I could do it. I always bring an air tank with me. But the problem is the thing's so loud and it don't hold enough capacity to get it. It'll either do one or the other, and then you got to go back and fill it up again, and then it takes forever. And then here you come driving by, and I'm like, yeah, just go ahead and hook it up with yours, So that's what works better. The onboard air does work better for sure.
Because I remember that because I still have that picture. It pops up, with me airing the frame up where you were laid out beside the Tundra there. But then it was, I guess, was it the next year you put the body on it and showed it black primer with the chassis done?
Yeah, well, I showed it a few times with just the chassis. I actually took it to the RA show out in Millington, I think, at the baseball field. I think it's Millington.
Yeah, they're actually back this year too.
Yeah, I seen that. Some of those guys walked up to me at Mini Nats and handed me some stickers of it, and I love that show, man. It was great.
I'd love to go, but it's the weekend before we leave Wednesday for SEMA. So there's physically no way I can drive 8 hours back, turn around 3 days later and drive 32. Like, it's just, I'd love to go because that show is always so good. I mean, I'd shoot 10, 12 features there every year, but
sure,
I can't make it work this year.
Right. And Adam actually had his Magnum out there with the trailer because my chassis was parked beside his car, and I have a big picture of it. And that's when he made his East Coast tour and went to like Heritage and all that. Huh?
Stayed with me. I want to say it was 2 weeks he stayed with me.
Yeah, he was out here. He trailered the car and all that out. And so we showed at RA together, and Lucky was there. Alfred came out. And then I can remember the hotel. I got to tell this is the hotel was crappy. It would have been like a negative stars and all 5 stars. It was bad, but we did get a good place to sleep. But man, we're all, having our fun by the pool. We jump in, and so some of us get out. Ronnie Pelham was there, and we get out, and Nikki sees something. We've got our feet in the pool by this time, and Nikki has her feet in the pool. So we're all like just talking and having a cold beer, and just everything was good. And Nikki looks at me and she goes, "Out of the shower now, or out of the pool now, go get a shower." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" We look down and there's like maggots crawling up to the pool. It was bad, man. So then everybody was like, "Yep, we're out of the pool." And that cleared the pool party out quick. So yeah, and then of course Lucky, I think he was drinking too many of them Mickeys and Colt 45s and all that. I
remember the I guess the Facebook post of Lucky at the gas station?
Yeah.
After having a few too many adult beverages.
Yeah. Well, it's what it was the wrong kind of beverage. Who the hell drinks Colt 45 and
Lucky?
The little Mickeys and stuff? I told him, I said, "Lucky, you can afford better beer. Come on, man." So yeah, Alfred was videoing him, losing his mind over there at a trash can. So,
I think he lost more than his mind from what that video was.
Yeah, I was trying to keep it clean, but he was. Yeah, y'all can paint the picture for yourself, but it was bad. So, showed the chassis there, and actually we left. I had a 2013 Silverado. I'd lowered on 24s, and that was actually what I was towing the chassis around with. But Nikki was like, "Well, we really need to get back. We got to get Dom." And of course, it's like 8 hours or so. It was a long trip. And I actually, when we get back, Alfred messages me. He's like, "Dude, you won a top 75. I'm like, "With just a chassis?" I was like, "That's pretty cool, And somehow the trophy got to me. And so I think the following year, I took the body panel. Well, I had a chassis that I put casters on, and I took the cab, fenders, and the bumper to Sean Reese, and he was doing the body work for me. And I would have let him finish it out. I mean, before, but man, it was just, it's like a 6 hour or 5.5 hour drive to his house. Yeah. And so I ended up stumbling upon this young kid. I call him a young kid. He's 12 years younger than me. His name's Adam. And I get with him, and he had painted Justin White's truck and did a great job.
The black, when it was black and red?
Yeah, the black with the red stripe. Yeah.
That's the only rendition of that truck that I have not shot for a feature.
Is that right? Yeah.
I shot it blue and I shot it red. So
yeah, we can talk about that one day too. There's a whole nother story behind that truck, but I left him. He was having such a bad time getting the guy to paint it that I left him 6-pack of beer out on my porch because he was like, man, I'm coming up there to get this truck. I said, he had to stop by here to get some parts or something. I forget what it was. And I said, so I left him a note and left him a 6-pack of beer. And I think him and Jason McCracken and maybe his dad may have been with him too. And
his dad's always with him. Yeah.
Yeah. So I left him a little note, but that, like I said, that is what it is. That's all, history that Justin and I know about. But so I get with Justin. I'm like, man, who's painting your truck? And he tells me. So I contact him. I'm like, hey, man, I'd really like for you to do the body work stuff on my truck. I seen what you did to Justin's, and I'm really impressed. I'd like for you to do it. And that's the only reason I switched to him. Well, one, because he was really good. And two, he was just so much closer. He was an hour from my house, So
Yeah.
instead of me driving 5.5 hours every time to go pick up something that I needed or, try to take my bed to Sean and all that, it made more sense to let somebody do it up here, So,
Yeah.
The following year it laid out, I had the cab, the fenders, the bumper, and the grill all in it. So basically everything forward but the hood. And I showed it the following year it laid out that way. Yeah, that's right.
And then I shot it for, I guess when street trucks had the blood, sweat, and gears, I shot it. I know it was a mini nats because we used the wheels through time because we walked in and said, hey, can we use this? And they're like, oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That was, what year was that? That was,
it just popped up in my memories. I'm wanting to say it was 18. It was 19, I believe, because we actually debuted the truck at Scraping the Coast in 2020. So I'm almost certain it was either 18 or 19, but I'm thinking it was 19.
I guess I'd have to pin back on which SEMA build I had that year. I don't think I had one that year. So
you
it might
actually
have been
had,
18.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you had the Ram because the picture showed you standing up. I'm almost certain you got up in the bed of the Ram, but nothing had been done to it.
19 then. Yeah, because that was 19 when I had it.
Yep.
Yeah, I dropped it off in May at Fat Fab. So I must have, yeah, that's right, because I had it at that show, like still stock with tinted windows, and I think the exhaust was on it. That was about it. Yeah.
I believe so, yeah. Because BJ was there, Stay Hard was there, me and Dom were there, because somebody got behind us, and I think it was Nikki, took a picture of us four standing there.
Oh, you mean all these guys that you're naming that either don't go to shows anymore or don't bring anything to shows anymore? Are those guys? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we did see, which I call him Stay Hard. Anytime somebody calls him Chris, I'm like, Chris who? But,
I used to call him Stay Hard, and I've been begging him to come on here because me and him go back, 30 plus years. Like, I'd love to have him on the podcast. So he's always been Stay Hard to me. Well, then when my daughter started walking and talking, he became Chris. Well, actually, he was to Chris because I'd start to say Stay Hard. I'm like, I don't want to say Stay Hard to this kid, So he was Chris for a while. So I got in the habit of calling him Chris, and Stay Hard went away. So, when he's local and you have a young child, you can't call your friend Stay Hard to, what does Stay Hard mean, Daddy? Nothing.
Well, I still can't get over calling him Chris, man. It just seems so weird to me. So I think even my kids know him as Stay Hard. So, but they're 15 now.
Stay Hard for years. So old Nancy has.
Oh yeah. So yeah.
I guess I shot that at 19. And they didn't run that for too long. I remember they brought it back, and yours was one of the few that worked into it. I know when I was editor, it's like I had several people's like, hey, why don't you run unfinished stuff? And it's like, well, for me, the internet is where all the unfinished goes. The magazine is where all the finished stuff goes. So I guess you caught the last few times that they actually did the blood, sweat, and gears. So it was the chassis with the full primered black. Was it primer or sealer or whatever it was?
At that point, I think it was sealer. Yeah. It was more flat black. Yeah. But I'm almost certain that was the seal coat on it. And then I'd actually remember driving it from the hotel down there with no windows, no insurance, nothing. And so I had I can't drop where I got it done at, but I had the dry shaft done. And so I'm thinking, man, it'll be fine. And I drove it from there, but the people that I had do it the first time, they had welded these weights on there. And I'm like, and this just don't feel right. So driving it, I never got up to speed at all. Most of the time I was just driving it off and on a trailer. So I pull out of the Comfort Inn to come meet you. And man, that dry shaft was like vibrating. I'm like, oh yeah, this thing ain't balanced right at all. So I actually took it to a machine shop here about an hour south of me. And yeah, the guy called it, he called it a bad name. He said, who built this dog beat, dry shaft? So I won't let out who did it, but man, that thing was rough. It was vibrating. So I had to put a new dry shaft in it after many nights. I had them rebuild me a new one, and that thing is perfect now. But so you shot it there, and then we were actually
right after that, didn't it, or shortly thereafter?
Well, it was close, and Adam had took on a couple other jobs, and he said, "Well, man, I took on this Monte Carlo." He goes, "You're gonna have to wait till I get it done, and then you can bring the truck." I'm like, "Okay, I understand." And he said, "Can you show it a few more times, whatever?" So I showed it a couple more times under construction, maybe, and then finally, Nikki was like,
"You were racking up on awards because your chassis, the work you did on the rear half of that, and the front that you saw through the engine bay was just ridiculous. Like you had more work in your chassis than most trucks do at shows."
Yeah, and so with that being said, my upper link bars, a lot of people like my wishbone, upper link. And so I'm sitting here one day, and I'm just now starting to buy tools that make life a lot easier for you, of course. But back then, I had a piece of cardboard laying here, pretty good sized piece, and I'm like, man, I got to come up with something that I don't want to just put regular bars across this thing. I want some kind of wishbone. So I basically drew me a center line down this big piece of cardboard. So I took a bowl. It was a bowl that I had for draining oil, and a trash can lid that off my trash can over here. And I laid it out on that cardboard to come up with that design. And then I took a razor blade and cut the cardboard out, taped it to my 4-link ends. And then I had a guy at my work machine me a shaft where the link bar would screw in, and then I was able to tape it all together to look at it first. And then my dad worked at this machine shop. I said, "Dad, you think you can get this cut out?" I said, "I'll pay him." He goes, "I'm sure we can get it cut out." So it's actually made of 1/2-inch steel plate, and I don't know that it's something that's been done. I mean, I'm sure people's doing it, and I've noticed some after that.
Yeah.
But it just blows people's mind when I tell them that I designed it with a bowl and a trash can lid. And so,
well, I'll go back to the whole when you live in West Virginia, you don't have many tools to use, so you have to use your bowls and your trash cans.
you just got to do what you got to do sometimes.
What you call it, West by God, Virginia?
Yeah, West by God, Virginia. A lot of people mistake it, and they'll say, "Oh, you're from Virginia." No, it's totally different, man. They're south and northeast of us. We're West Virginia, West by God, Virginia. And no, while we're at it, I'm not kin to the wonderful whites of West Virginia either. So,
well, I do remember coming up your way and shooting a wedding for what was his name? Green, Justin. Because I remember that his name was Green and her name was Green, and I was like, "Are you sure you're not cousins? Is it Justin and Amy?" I know they were mini truckers.
I remember you telling me you were coming up here for that, but I don't remember who they are. But I do remember
their last names were the same, but they supposedly weren't related. So I don't know. That's a West Virginia thing.
Well,
Nathan says all the time, "Is like, well, I wouldn't date my sister, but boy, my cousin sure is hot."
Yeah, I'm far from that, man. If you got the same blood in me, no. That's why I love Nikki, and we found out that we're not kin, so I'll just stay married to her forever.
Well,
So,
that goes back to, speaking of her, that goes back to where you said your brother, didn't he, your brother introduce you because of mini trucks?
well, I tell everybody, and yeah, well, she'll admit it. She goes, I stalked his Facebook, and she'll tell people that. So what happened? My brother and her were friends, or well, I mean, they still are, but you know what I'm saying. They knew each other before I knew her, and so that life changing event we talked about, and I'm
Yep.
single, and I'm just doing my thing, and all of a sudden, I get a friend request from her, and I'm like, who is this cute little chick trying to add me? And so my brother tells me, he goes, hey, there's this girl that added you on Facebook. Her name is Madeline. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, that's a friend of mine or something. We made small talk about it. And so he goes, and then he goes, you need to ask her out. I'm like, I do? He's like, yeah. He goes, she hit me up and asked if you were single. And he told her yes. And then so she would actually be on Facebook, and like she would drive. My parents live up in Bluewell, so as she would ride by, I would get a Facebook message, and it would just be little eyes, that she's stalking me. Her and her
Uh-oh.
son would drive through. Yeah. So then if I would see her, I would send those little eyes, and she was like stalker, and I call her stalker or whatever. So we had actually met up a time or two, and then I went to Vegas for West Coast Nationals. It was XL's, yeah, it would have been our 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
So that's actually the first time I ever flew in an airplane as well. So BJ and I fly out there, and I forgot it was like midnight out there. And
Oh,
of
that's
course,
when you put all the chips in the front of Adam's car, wasn't it?
yeah, paint chips. Yeah, we can get to that too. He still won't let me live that down, but I actually think he was busting my chops about it this past weekend too. so anyway, I'm in Vegas, and BJ and I were at the casino, and we come in late, and I'd had some of them bitch ultras, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna message her, and see what's up. So I message her, and we start talking to her a minute. I said, oh my God. I lost track of time. I'd forgot it was 3 a.m. and back here. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm like, I didn't mean to bother you. She goes, well, I'm up now. What do you want? So we made small talk for just a little bit. And I said, well, I'll let you get back to bed, and then kind of just the rest was history. She was actually at Nopi in 2003. So she's kind of grown up around this as well with some of our other friends that more or less acquaintances that we knew that were customizing some trucks and doing this. So she's been around it, before.
Kind of like Kristen. She was at Nopi 2005. Remember when she moved in with me. I was looking through her photo albums because she had a Civic back then with carbon fiber hood and carbon fiber fenders and all that. And she moved in, and there were several pictures she had of the burnout contest at Nopi 2005. And I'm in the photos taking pictures for magazines. Had no clue who she was. So it's always nice to find one that's actually involved in the scene.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd just taken her to, I'd be like, hey, you want to go to these truck shows? Heck, we booked Severed in the Midwest just a few minutes ago. Well, a few minutes before I came on with you. We just booked that for August, and she's ready to roll. I mean, there ain't many of them. I mean, if somebody will take off and go to Vegas with you and go to Florida, go wherever, she's definitely a keeper.
I'm honestly shocked you didn't take her last name when y'all got married, though. So
I guess I could, but nah, I'm good.
What was it, Mini Nats last year? She's talking about shooting her truck when it was done or whatever, and I was like, well, Darrell took 7 years on his truck, so you're gonna have to wait a little while.
Well,
you mouthed off something to me or something, and I was like, that's it. I'm not shooting that truck when it's done. And she's like, whoa. I have nothing to do with what he says. You're still shooting this when it's done.
That's right. Well, I mean, as you can see, it ain't made much progress. It's sitting right there, and I've been working on Kenny's, which is sitting right there. Both of them have 3/4 chassis, all that, but we're going to get back on hers now. I actually got new doors for it. I don't like those little windows. So I wanted to put a mirror on it.
Before we get into hers, I guess we need to go back and finish on, we've kind of bounced a little bit. Go back and finish on to Outlaw. So you got it painted. And then what year? All this blends together for me. What year was it I shot it for once it was done?
2020. Yeah,
Okay.
we debuted it at Scraping the Coast. And so coming down, the stretch there before Scraping the Coast, we'd actually picked it was going to be Battle in Bama we were going to debut it at because we knew we couldn't hit mini. Actually, mini nats had got postponed to October.
COVID, yeah.
Yeah, because of COVID. So then Nikki was like, we're debuting at Battle in Bama. So I try to be pretty nice and not rush people and this and that. So the truck was getting airbrushed. And so I'd actually made a run up that way through Huntington, and I stopped by and I told Adam, I said, I'm going to be up there for work. I'm going to stop by and check on it or just check your progress. He goes, okay, cool. Come on by. So I did. But before I got there, Nikki said, I'm getting that wrong. I stopped there and looked at it. I called her back after I left and I'm like, I don't think it's making Battle in Bama. It's just he's got way too much to do.
Yeah.
And she goes, and she kind of put her foot down. She's like, look, you're going to have to rush him or whatever. You're going to not rush him, but you know what I mean? You're going to have to tell him, Adam, we've got to debut this,
I knew she wore the pants in the family. I swore she did.
Yeah. So and honestly, it all worked out for the better because I tell Adam, I'm like, hey, look, we really would like to debut at Battle in Bama. I said, if not, it would be, and actually I think, and I could be wrong, but Battle in Bama got moved.
Yeah.
It got moved to September.
So that was my quote unquote bachelor party was Battle in Bama, but it got moved and a wedding got moved and COVID just screwed a bunch of shit up. So
it really did. It messed everything up, but it kind of on, I'm not ever going to try to say that COVID did us some favors. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I actually lost my mom to COVID. So, but with those shows getting moved, we kept trying to pick the next. And so she said, okay, well, Battle in Bama got moved. Let's shoot for Scraping the Coast. Well, I call Adam back and I'm like, hey, I'm really shooting for Scraping the Coast. You think we can get this done? And he was like, I'm on it. He said, I won't let you down. And he goes, I'm kind of actually glad you called me and said, hey, we got to really do this. He goes, because then that lights a fire under me and I'll get going. And man, he really knocked it out of the park. And
you had it in was it the OLP's booth at Battle in Bama?
We actually
Scraping the Coast.
At Scraping the Coast, yeah. So what happened there? Once we come down to the home stretch of getting it done, Kenny was over here helping me with door panels. Little Shorty, man, that guy, I still call him pretty much the MVP of helping me get this thing finished at the end because I was through my job. We were getting more like rush jobs and I'm working late hours. I mean, I come home one night, it was like 8:00. I changed clothes and I went straight to the body shop. And Andy was already down there and the painter needed help. And I said, Andy, can you get down there for me? Never complain. Yeah, man, as soon as I leave work, I'm on my way down there. And he would go help him. So long story short, that we get the truck completed. We put the bed on that final night and we're rolling out to Scraping the Coast the next morning. That's how close it was. We put the bed back on and the two kick panels that we done that has the Outlaw in them, I had to pop those on. We had glued them the night before, covered them, and put the Outlaw in them. And then I popped them on the next morning. We had the trailer pretty much loaded. So I loaded it onto the trailer and off we went. And I took my kids as well. So
yeah, I'm kind of still disappointed to this day that, even though I knew I was going to be the one shooting it, I don't think you ever sent me any teaser pictures of it done. I think your Facebook post of it being in, at Scraping the Coast is when I saw it for the first time. So I think I'm hurt a little bit over that.
Well, I apologize, but we were trying to keep it from everybody pretty much. But what happened, so I would post like a teaser pic, but I would screenshot it. Like I'd take the picture, screenshot it, and I'd take the marker and do the graphics. I'd take the graphics out of it. So on the way down, so Nikki and I got to talking and she goes, because we had our hotel reservation on the coast, in Biloxi. She goes, we shouldn't go all the way to Biloxi. I'm like, why? She goes, let's stay somewhere outside. That way we can
an open trailer.
No, it was in a box then. I hauled it
Okay.
in a box I actually used BJ's box trailer
That's right.
for the first several shows. And after it got a chip or two on it, I'm like, you know what? I'm putting it on the open trailer. Too much damn gas money. But people still ask me, man, why is that thing not in an enclosed? But and two, it's fun for me to ride down the road and people look at it and wave, and it's
because
just part
you
of
use
the fun.
a California car duster on it to wipe it off, and you don't worry about scratches. That's why it's on an open trailer.
Well, actually, after that, we shit canned that thing. After you said that, we no longer use it. Don't even own one, so it's gone. But
proud of you, Darrell.
Oh yeah, well, I'm glad somebody is. So what we did, we stayed in. We grabbed a hotel in Mobile, Alabama, and we left the kids sleeping. Which, I mean, we were parked pretty much right near our room. We left the kids sleeping. We got up at I think it was 6:30 or something. We backed the truck off and just took some detailer and wiped it down to get a little bit of the road dust, whatever off of it.
Yeah.
And which it wasn't bad, being in an enclosed. So we lay it out in the hotel parking lot, and I do a video, take all my pictures. And so actually what was funny, a guy was coming by, he was on a bicycle, and this early in the morning, it almost ran into a dumpster. When he turned around to look at the truck, he was like, damn, and almost plowed a dumpster, man. I was thinking, golly, that would have been bad. But so anyhow, we took our pictures because we wanted to be, with social media and everything, it ain't like it used to be. You show up at a show, pull the truck off or whatever, and then everybody got to see it then. So before, we didn't want to get to scraping the coast, unload it at our hotel, try to get it up to the show, which they weren't going to let us bring it in.
Post it first. And somebody else post it first, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't want somebody else posting it first. So we take all our pictures, videos, blah, 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 and then we post it. So, and of course, we're getting, messages, hey, man, it's beautiful, blah, blah, blah. So, ODB hits me up. He's like, man, he goes, we need that in our booth. And I'm like, hey, you just tell me, I got an inside spot anyway. That's what I paid for. And he goes, we need it at your booth. But what happened, Josh Ellis actually sent my post to ODB. And he's like, he always tells me a story. He goes, I told Josh, like, dude, where did you get these? And he's like, he just posted them. And then he goes to my page and starts checking stuff out. And the ball got rolling there. And then I met with those guys and parked it at their booth. And actually, it was kind of cool. God rest his soul. Greg Miller come around, and I had it laid in a parking lot getting ready to basically the stage to go on into the show. And Greg come over there and talked to me. Gosh, I bet he talked to me 15, 20 minutes. He goes, this is one of them I've been waiting to see, and
you won Best of Show that year, didn't you? You won Best of Show or something, didn't you?
Best of Show mini truck, yeah. Yep. And boy, was that hot. Like, we were standing outside. It was like 102. But luckily they called the best ofs first. So once I got that, we went back inside. I was like, man, this is way too hot out here. But that's when we debuted it. Yeah.
Scraping the coast was April, right?
June.
Because I remember right after that, you had it at Waka's show at Southern Tradition.
I actually left it at Waka's house. Waka was like, what do we got to do? And he said, Darrell, we'll get you some zebra cakes or something. So I said, okay. And I talked to Nikki. I was like, well, what do you want to do? And she goes, I don't want to tote the trailer, this box all the way back to West Virginia if we're going to turn around and come back. Yeah. So we talked about it, and Waka was like, man, I'd really like to have it there or whatever. And I said, okay. And I said, man, I really need a place to put this trailer, and I'll leave the truck. And I didn't want to, man. My anxiety was up. I'm like, I'm going to leave this thing in Georgia, locked up. And I'm almost certain I gave Waka the keys to the trailer, but I may have kept the keys to the truck.
Waka's a little sketchy. If you don't know, Waka is a little bit sketchy. Heather's okay, but he's a little sketchy.
Yeah. So I trusted him. I mean, I knew Walker for a long time,
Yeah.
but I mean, we never get to hang out because he's in Georgia, we're in West Virginia, and I'm like, man, I ain't feeling this leaving it at somebody's house. But I knew, and I probably could have went out of my way to left it at somebody else's house or whatever, but they took great care of it. I mean, I don't even.
He knew what he had is so. I mean,
Yeah,
I would have done it as well.
sure, yeah. So we left it there, and so the following weekend we come back down, and it was I don't know if we brought Don, but I'm thinking it was just me and Nikki, maybe, I don't know, but we actually come back down and showed at his show, and it took Best of Show, and that's when you had the Dodge there.
Yeah, I remember that. I thought that was cool because, Cranberry parked next to it. At least I had a little bit of like behind the scenes coverage because people were always at your truck. So at least mine would be in the background for some of the content that was shared.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's what you was telling me the day of. You was like, I'm glad I get to park near you. At least I'll get somebody's attention over there.
And
But
I remember that show, middle of the day, the way the sun was hitting your graphics immediately. I'm like, all right, I have to shoot this truck with strobes because in the sun, those graphics stand out. But if you get it later in the day, like usually a black truck like that, I would
yeah,
shoot at sunset or sunrise and you never would have seen the graphics. But there was something about that day that the sun just made your graphics glow. So I knew, all right, cool. When I shoot this, it has to have lights.
yeah, absolutely. And so when you told me that, I'm like, well, heck yeah, it's awesome. And then I really started paying attention to it because, like I said, we got it out once it was completed. We got it out at that hotel. The sun wasn't shining; it was overcast.
Yeah.
The graphics didn't really pop that well. And then
Your
plus we get the
almost die if it's shaded.
yeah. And what's funny is you can walk up the side of the truck and there's no sun hitting it. You can't even tell graphics are on it.
Yep.
It just looks black. So, excuse me. So we show it there, and I'm trying to remember the next. Oh, as a matter of fact, we come back from there, and the next show we were hitting pretty hot. We went to Camp and Drag, and it took Best of Show there as well. And I always tell everybody, Camp and Drag. A lot of people don't camp, but man, I absolutely thought that was one of the funnest shows I've been to. I don't mind the camp, and we cooked our food. Hell, Nikki cooked biscuits and gravy and everything right there at our. We took the box trailer and put air mattresses in it, and that's where we slept. So we took a big old fan with us to stay cool, and I really enjoyed Camp and Drag. But after that, I guess it would have probably been the Spark Show,
which is where I shot it.
Yeah, is where you shot it. But if you remember, I said, man, this needs to be shot at Dell Jr.'s property with his old West Town. And you go, yeah, it absolutely does.
And you said, well, was back and forth with Spook trying to figure out a way to make it happen.
Yep. And you actually said, well, let me make a call. And you did. And then you were screenshotting me messages, and you were like, I think, how did you put it? You were like, I can't believe this happened this quick or something. You were like, I figured it would take like 30 different phone calls and 30 different people to get through to Dell Jr. when we come to find out, and I'm actually now really good buddies with Spook. We actually had lunch here the other day, and then we communicate on Instagram all the time. He's painting my daughter's go-kart helmet. So it was approved to be shot at Junior's property, but we could never hook up. And then fast forward to the Spark Show, you're like, hey, look, I brought my lights. I'm here. Let's get it done before it does get a chip or two.
So I will say, shooting the Outlaw at the Spark Show, to this day, 23 years of me taking photos for magazines, that was the hottest photo shoot I have ever had. I think I lost 10 pounds that day shooting that inside. It was like 212 degrees inside that barn.
Oh yeah, it was insanely hot, and which it's hot at the Spark Show anyway. I mean, we actually left the show, several of us, and went and got in a pool because it was so hot, and the water felt like lukewarm bath water. It wasn't even cold to cool you off, But so,
and for those photographers that have not shot with strobes, so if you shoot a black vehicle with strobes, you have to move the strobes a million times because it's gonna show, it's gonna reflect, there's gonna be hot spots. So there was a lot of moving stuff around, trying to make the right angle to make the graphics pop. And then Darrell decides to go to one of these antique photo locations and borrow an outfit for him and Nikki to look like they were in the Old West, knowing that it was 212 degrees in that barn.
Yeah. Well, we actually didn't get to borrow them. We had to pay $75 to rent those.
But was
the
it worth
lady, I think so. You wasn't, if you remember correctly, you wasn't feeling the idea at first, and I even think Kristen said, I think this is pretty awesome. And then we get in there and put those outfits on, and the lady wouldn't let me bring two of the toy guns. She only let me bring one, and I was kind of pissed about that. But we made it work, and that was a lot of fun. I get ribbed a little bit about it these days because everybody was like, "Could you not have stuck on some cowboy boots? You're in Nike tennis shoes." So, but at least they were black, and they kind of just blend in a little bit. But all in all, that was a great time. And I actually think I know some of those photos made it into Street Trucks. And
oh yeah,
to tell that story of how Nikki and I or how we came together, our wedding invitations actually had my truck on it when it was just black. And so she's always been so cool with doing stuff like that. And so her back to the whole Facebook stalking thing, her keeping up with the pictures and the updates were originally on my brother's page. But then that's why she added me, because I was posting and tagging him, but for some odd reason, she couldn't see all the pictures. So she added me. Fast forward to now, then, she's been with me every step of the way. And then to finalize that photo shoot with her in Old West clothing and all this it's just over the top for me, man. I loved it.
That's still to this date probably one of my favorite photo shoots, even though it was a million degrees in there. There was a couple hundred people that come through and kind of watched the photo shoot and saw the behind the scenes. I mean, most people don't get to see that. Like if you have a photo shoot, it's often some remote location. It's not at a show. I spent more time shooting your truck that day than I have shot anybody's. Like I have more hours tied up in that shoot than anything.
Yeah.
I missed the whole day of the show, but half the show to us to check that out. I mean, that still was cool. And then to see you two in the Old West clothes to match the truck, like that was really cool, man. I mean, to be able to be the one to do that was really cool for me.
Well, and I got to back up again, and I appreciate you saying that. And I got to back up a little bit. When we debuted at Scraping the Coast, I always try to be a man of my word. And I told you, when this thing's done, you'd be the first one to shoot it. And of course, I was approached by All Time Low magazine. They're like, "Hey, Michelle will take it down and shoot it for the cover. It's yours." And I said, "I can't do it." I said, "If you want to run it later, that's fine." I said, "But Brandon gets it first." And I held true to that. So it all worked out, and it was hot that day. And even Wilson, he'll bust my chops about it. He was like, "Man, I can't believe you was in there all day at a photo shoot and you wasn't out here hanging out with us and all this." But I'm like, "Dude, it had to get done, and he understands, but he still likes to bust my chops about it.
I'm still upset though that truck did not make cover. That truck is 100% cover worthy. The frame, the interior, the paint, the bodywork, everything checked all the boxes. Like if I was editor at that time, that truck would have been cover. I mean, the feature was still cool, but to me, that truck deserved cover. Not the fact that we're friends, none of that. You take all that away. If you look at the caliber of the truck, that truck to me still deserved cover. But at that time, that was out of my hands. And we see where running mini trucks on the cover got me. So
Right. Well, and I do appreciate you saying that as well. And we all thought so too. I was excited. I thought it was going to hit the cover. It was disappointing. I will admit it. I told Nikki my frustrations and a few close friends. I'm like, "Man, I really hate it. I'm bummed about it that it didn't make the cover, but I get it. It is what it is." But I'm just glad it got featured. And, I'm more, we can all talk trophies and do all that. Eddie and I were talking about trophies the other day. if I don't get one, I'm not like mad or nothing like that, but it's very nice to win them. And I mean, and the reason I say that anymore is because you're not just winning. And for you all that do listen to this, if you go for a trophy at these shows that we go to these days, look at the time these painters put in these trophies and the billet stuff that's on these trophies. There's a lot of time and a lot of great artists like Gooch and Feltham and all these
Yep.
guys put these times. Who would not want to own something like that?
Look at my show when Brandon Perry built all my best ofs.
Yeah.
Didn't you build a couple for me back in the day?
I'm not sure.
You built a couple.
I may have. I can't remember, but I know I did. Me and Sizemore did a lot for Down for Dennis, and when we first started, that show, I know I built some there. Actually, I think Brandon Perry took home one of them. It was like a C notch, and I put a bag plate on it, and actually put a bag in it with an airline, and welded a bung in it to where the airline looked like it went into the frame. It's pretty cool trophy, but I do remember building that one. But so yeah, I mean, the winning the trophies are great and all that, and that's cool. But this past weekend mini nights weekend, it's real cool when people come up to you and they tell you, man, I'm so glad you brought the truck. I've never got to see it in person, and I appreciate you bringing it out. And that means more to me than anything. I had a guy tell me,
the truck there? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, it was at my booth. So
that's a good transition into, so you building this truck, I guess, progressed into Poe built. Is that where all this started from? Was you building the Outlaw?
Kind of, but I'll tell you how. Well, see, I've done stuff for people for years. I've body dropped trucks, simple sheet metal work just to smooth out a bed. If you notice, my bed doesn't have any bead rolling and stuff in it.
Well, I guess we need to step back. So you have Outlaw, DA Outlaw.
DA.
Well, then the shop that you're sitting in is called Garage.
The Garage. And how that came about was my kids, when they were younger, my twin girls, they would say, Daddy, you going in the garage. They couldn't say the word the. Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going in the garage. So it just kind of stuck. And that's why I left it that way, because basically they named it, but so the Poe built stuff really took off here in the last few months. Like I said, I've body dropped several trucks. I bagged Kenny's Mazda. Ashley's Tacoma, I body dropped the bed on it, redone the rear suspension, and that thing turned out amazing. It's one of my favorites I've ever had my touch on. I
got to shoot that one too.
Yeah, absolutely, and the feature was great. So anyways, I've done stuff over the years. I mean, like I said, ever since I took welding in school and high school, and I've fixed people's like hydraulics. That one guy had a cylinder that shot through the frame. It mushroomed it out. I had to fix all that. And that's kind of where I would really get into, the welding, and people would bring me stuff to weld. And I wasn't like, at that time, metal was cheap. And, I'd say, hey, buy the metal and give me $50 and we'll fix that thing, but
those days are gone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So to back up just a little bit, at Scraping the Coast, when we debuted the truck, Mike and ODB, Mike Murray, introduced me to Sean Rose. And I didn't know Sean's story at that time or anything. And so we kind of fast forward to mini nats when Sean brought his bead roller out. Mm-hmm. So, and actually I got to back up even one more time for a minute. I had Brandon Perry help me bead roll some panels for the Outlaw in the beginning, when it was the whole black and tan thing.
So we bead roll. Teach him how to do that?
Do what?
Didn't Casey Harden teach him how to do that?
I don't know. I'm not sure, but
I know they did that on Mike Alexander's Tacoma.
Yeah, absolutely. And so he had this hand crank bead roller. So he would hold the thing and he would tell me when to turn it. The hand crank, Brandon would. So we made my panels for the original bed that was going to be on the Outlaw. And so it kind of intrigued me a little bit. I'm like, man, I really want to do some bead rolling, but I never bought a bead roller or anything like that. So I had a truck that was over here for Sizemore. It was a dually. I just happened to see a bead roller laying in it. I never knew it was even here in my shop. So I'm like, hell, there's a hand crank bead roller. So anyways, he moves and all that stuff. He come and got all that. So fast forward to mini nights when Sean brought his bead roller. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go over there and talk to him. And I think he had made an announcement on Facebook or whatever that he was going to let people do some sample bead rolls and stuff. So I went over there and I rolled one of the R's because he had it for Rose Metalworks. So I rolled the R and I'm like, heck yeah, man, that was awesome. And of course it was on a machine with a foot control and speed control and all this. So Wilson, I go over and I kind of stuck my foot in my mouth, I guess. I said, man, you're really building this shop truck of yours pretty nice. I said, but it's got that old snap bed cover on the back. He goes, yeah. I said, we need to get rid of that. He goes, why? I said, we need to fully sheet metal the bed and bead roll it. And we worked up a deal to where he pitched in on the bead roller. I did some of the fab work, all this. Well, so that was mini nights when it got moved to the fall. And yeah, so then he was like, well, we got to debut, we're going to do this bed. You're going to fully sheet metal. I had to redo the rear suspension and all that. And he said, if we're going to do that, we've got to hurry in a sense because I want it debuted at Mini Nats 2021. So we come down crunch time and I started making all the sheet metal panels and I tried to bead roll it. We bought the bead roller and I was fooling with it some and it just wasn't working out. And what I come to find out is I was trying to bead roll everything and like crank a thing down and bead roll it and it was warping the panels and all this. So I figured out to back it off a little bit and roll it a couple different times. So that was later on, but he goes, man, we're coming down to crunch time. He goes, we're going to have to find somebody to bead roll these panels. He goes, if you haven't figured this thing out, we're running out of time. So we sent the panels after I cut them out. We sent them to John. He actually took them to John Shank and John actually bead rolled everything. And then we brought the panels back and I welded them in and finished all that. And he finally took the truck on. So that's kind of where the ball got rolling was when I bead rolled with Sean Rose at Mini Nats. So I said, I got to have one of those. And well, then after Wilson's truck and I started figuring this out a little bit, I told Ashley and Nate when her truck was here, I'm like, we're going to do some simple bead roll panels in your bed. And if you like them, let's roll with them. And so I did that. And they were just something simple, nothing major. It's just some lines. And after they had the bed line X, man, it just made it pop. It was really cool. Yeah. And so after that, it just kind of snowballed and people were hitting me up. Hey, can you do some of this engine bay? Can you do these panels? So after that, I'm still doing some stuff. I've got a car coming here probably next week. I got to do a little bit too. And I did Dwayne Mullins' bed.
You did Mitchell's underhood panel for the truck.
Yep, I did. Yep, I did under the hood panel for Mitchell. And it's kind of crazy that these splash panels are taking off, behind your wheels and all that. I've done a set of those for Wilson here lately, Brian McLean. So I'm like, I'll make some tag boxes, kind of one-off tag boxes, splash panels, and then wheel tubs. So I'm trying to, in a sense, for Poe built, I still want to do more shirts of stuff that I've built. And
wait, keep producing. You built Ice Cold? Isn't that what Adam asked you?
No, I did not build it. We did produce a shirt from it, but I did the sheet metal work under the hood. I changed all the airbags out, put all new 3/8 line on it. We put new compressors and did some bead rolling, like the panel under the back has some bead rolling in it and stuff. Okay. So, but yeah, I did not build it. No, but I put my touches on it. So
I can't wait to see that one when it's done too.
Yeah, man, I've seen some sneak peeks of the interior, and it's just it's going to be way over the top compared to what it was. I mean, it's going to be really nice, and so at that moment we're talking about this, and I'm like, I'd rather produce some sheet metal parts that people can take home with them and bolt on, or a body guy can say, well, hey, this bead rolling is something I can't do, but you've got the wheel tubs here. somebody buys them from me or whatever, and then they go and the body shop guy welds them in. So I'm trying to do, that's more of what I want to do. I want to produce the stuff that, or even like engine, not the whole big engine bay covers, but like a radiator support cover,
Yeah.
smaller stuff like that, to where I can show up at a show and have 10 of those covers ready to go. And then people buy them, and then I come back and produce more. I actually, before me and you got hooked up on this, we got all the computers set up. So I was actually cutting out splash panels for a guy that ordered some, so that's more of where the Poe built thing is. That's where I want it to go. I do chassis and stuff as well. Like I said, Nicky's and Kenny's and Tab, or Kenny and Tab are doing this as a collaboration, them together. That's their ideals or whatever. So I do chassis work and stuff as well. But right now I'm really not wanting to do that outside of more or less just friends right now, because I like doing the sheet metal work and the bead rolling,
This
and
is all outside of your normal job where you travel most of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. So I travel. Actually, I spent the night out last night. I was in North Carolina, and I usually stay out 2 nights a week, Mondays and Thursdays. And and then in between that,
if y'all are friends with Darrell online, you know what everybody's air conditioning units look like outside the hotel, because he prefers the rooms with the views of the air conditioning units.
Well, actually, I had one last night, and I was going to post it, and I'm like, nah, I ain't gonna do it, because that was off to my left is all the air conditioning units, but to my right was a golf course. So that was nice, pretty scenery over there, but I didn't post it. I just let it go. But yeah, somehow it seems I get the air conditioning rooftop views all the time.
And I always post that when I go somewhere. I say, I guess I got the Darrell Poe room today because I have air conditioners out my window.
Yeah, that's right. I think you got one in Vegas, didn't you, or something like that, or
on the
somewhere
way back. Yeah,
on the way back. Yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely unlucky when it comes to hotel views. They like for me to look at their air conditioning units.
So what's I know I always give you a hard time because you said your truck took 7 years and Nikki's truck is going to take 7 years, and you're what, 2 or 3 years into it now? So what's
yeah, probably 2 or 3, which, like I said, I've been doing a lot of stuff. The Mazda here. I kind of wanted to get him caught up when we actually found this Mazda in a tractor and trailer, box trailer, at a junkyard. And Nate went down to look at a 2-car trailer, and I guess maybe he had a mini truck shirt on or something, I don't know. And he struck up a conversation with the guy. And the guy was like, I got a mini truck in that box trailer over there. And he went and looked at it, and it has can-do arms on it and all this stuff. So long story short, we bought it. Well, Kenny bought it. We got it back here, and I put it on my frame table, got the chassis built to try to get it caught up to kind of where Nikki's is. And then, so now after many nights, I told Nikki, I'm like, we're going to get back on yours. I ordered a Dustin Boone gave me 2 doors that don't have those ugly windows. And so I'm going to have them body worked. And one of the doors has power windows. I bought an actuator, or the mechanism to make the other one power window. So the steps are getting, it's going, but it's just going slow. Like I said, with doing all this Poe built stuff. So we do have plans. I'm looking for an LS. We're going to put an LS in it. And once I get the motor mounts and the transmission mount made and all that, a few more things, it'll be ready to tear apart and have the chassis powder coated and stuff. So we're pretty close. It's just, we got to get that ball rolling to get the parts, so I'm hoping it don't take 7 years, but
well, I've told her since the beginning it's going to take 7 years because yours took that long. She goes, it better not take that long. Well, I guess she needs to put her foot down and tighten those pants, the belt up a little bit and put you to work.
That's right. Crack the whip, huh? But I mean, there's been a lot done to it, of course. I mean, all the wheels. Awesome. Yeah, got little shop disc brakes and all that on it, and the whole firewall isn't done, but I did do some of the firewall work on it, and so we're getting there. Like I said, slowly. We actually Sunday, a guy sent me a truck that was for sale that had an LS in it, and the lady had listed it wrong. She put that it was a 2-wheel drive. Well, I get down there and start the engine, purred like a kitten, man. I'm like, we finally found it. We got this and the transmission. I look in the floor, it's got a shifter in the floor for 4-wheel drive. I'm like, well, we'll pass on that. But it is in the works to get the engine and transmission here soon. So definitely try to get on it. I hope it may not debut at Mini Nats next year, but hopefully the following year it'll be there.
Well, it's definitely cool to see the progression from the, square body, rock bottom, shooting that. Like I said, that it's always cool to see that pop up in memories that I shot that, and then then I shot it. So I guess that's been 3 different shoots I've done for you personally. So that's been kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been very cool. Yeah, so it had been the one at Laid Out, the one at Wheels of Time, under construction, and then our actual Street Trucks photo shoot at Sparks. Yeah.
And then, of course, that 10 pounds I lost that day shooting your truck. Oh, I already picked it back up and found some of its friends. So,
oh yeah, I know what you mean. I know. Nikki and I have just started walking. I got to lose a little weight myself, man. We've started walking and trying to eat better, but it'll catch up to you for sure. And you've also shot a few trucks that, or at least a couple trucks that I've actually done. Like I said, you've done, or you shot Ashley's Tacoma.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool to see something else that don't belong to me getting shot, So, yeah, I really enjoyed her feature.
Well, it was good to have you on. I know we could probably talk for hours over stories, because there's always so many stories, and bring my daughter in with the hashtag this and the hashtag that. I think that's the only way my daughter talks to you, even after gosh, that's been 2006 we had the first show. I still remember her coming. Was it your room? She come in with that mullet wig and was like, "I'm Kenny Chesney."
Yeah, I'm Kenny Chesney, and we were actually making fun of Kenny Franklin though, because he had his mullet at the time. But
so that's been 18 years now. So
it's been a long time. And actually, if you remember, we were all at Myrtle Beach together, and that's when all the hashtag stuff was going. We were saying hashtag hash brown and just making up stupid hashtags and just to get a big laugh out of it. But you all were in Myrtle. Yeah, go ahead.
Thinking of Myrtle Beach, I think the funniest thing is we were here with Stayhart at the house working on his truck, and you had posted something about you and Nikki being at Myrtle Beach, and Chris commented and tagged you or Nikki or something and said he was at Myrtle Beach, and he's sitting in my garage posting that he's at Myrtle Beach. Yep. He's there to see Nikki. That's always a fun to rib some friends like that from time to time.
Yeah, he likes to get under my skin a little bit when it comes to her, but yeah, I think
you let him do it one time, it's always going to happen. That's just how that's going to be with him.
Oh yeah, and then at the 30th XL30 last year, they were all picking her up and taking pictures in front of that Extreme Lows 30th anniversary background. They picking her up and all that. So they like to rib me a little bit because I'm pretty protective of her. And I always tell everybody, it's like, you can hug her. Don't touch her, in weird ways or anything like that. Just keep her distance. So, yeah, I'm pretty protective of her when it comes to her.
Yeah, that was fun. He's like, man, Darrell's in Myrtle Beach. Let me tag, let me pick a hotel that what are they at? And I remember him choosing his location was that hotel y'all were staying at. It's like, man, I'm in, Myrtle Beach for the weekend or whatever. So
yeah, because
my garage.
Really? Well, I didn't know he was in your garage, but I seen him do that. And because we were there by ourselves, we were just trying to have a weekend getaway. And I'm like, and see, he done it. And so did Brian Lucas. He did the same thing. And I'm like, these fools aren't here, man. I'm like, God, tell me they're not here. And I thought, man, my weekend was going to get ruined by my buddies showing up to crash the party.
Nope. Chris was sitting in my garage working on his truck. Is it his truck or the Subaru? I think was working on, but either way, he was in my garage when that happened. That's still hilarious to this day. So, but
that's pretty good.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. Like I said, you've got quite a bit of work behind you, and sounds like quite a bit of work ahead of you. So how do people find you online when they want to go see some of your work or what you're even involved with?
Yeah, of course, on Facebook, it's just Darrell Poe Jr. And then on Instagram, it's the outlaw_XL. I post a lot of build pics and stuff there. Eventually, I want to do, Poe built pages and stuff, just so a lot of that traffic can go over there and see what I'm producing, So
Yeah.
that's main. I mean, I don't do a lot on TikTok. I do have a TikTok account, but I hardly ever fool with it. I'll get on there and watch everybody else's videos, but
Well, I guess the question is, do you have an OnlyFans?
negative.
Are you
No.
sure?
No, I thought about getting one for Nikki because her feet are so cute. I said, we need one that says only feet. So I mean, I kid her about that all the time. I said, honey, you can make millions just showing your feet.
So my daughter informed me the other day that she could not do feet finders because they make you do a 1099, so you have to claim taxes. And I was like, oh, so that's the only reason you don't want to do feet finders, not because it's not what you need to do. She goes, no, just because I'd have to pay taxes on it.
Oh, really? Wow. Well, I'll let Nikki know that we would have to pay taxes on showing her feet off.
Serena can tell her all about it, I guess. So
yeah, I better stay away from messing with Nikki about her feet and stuff. She'll be really mad. But no, I mean, and that's really how you can find me. Just those mainly Facebook and Instagram mainly.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. It's been an absolute blast. Hopefully we'll see more about what Poe Built's about and see you turn out more stuff. So I appreciate you coming on. It was definitely good to talk with you, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate you having me on it. It has been fun, looking back at older times and talking about those. That's what it's all about. And everybody's got a history, every mini trucker or whatever, and everybody started from somewhere. So it's always good to hear people's stories, and I appreciate you letting me tell mine.
All right. Well, we'll catch you at the next show.
All right. Sounds good, Brandon. We'll see you.